with Truth News Radio Australia, beaming out to you on the 21st of August 2013. And my name is Hereward Fenton, and I'm going to be with you for the next 2 hours. We're going to be going through some Australian news, some international news, and in the second hour, I have a very interesting guest coming on, Susan Lindauer, who's well known to many people who are of a truth bent, you might say, on the internet. She is a self-described former CIA asset and a whistleblower and anti-war activist who has written a book called Extreme Prejudice about her trials and tribulations with the US government, her arrest, charges that were laid and then later dropped in regard to her being a representative of a foreign power. A very unusual story with a lot of twists and turns in it. And she's going to be coming on to talk about that and current events that are currently unfolding in the world with stories such as Bradley Manning, Julian Assange and Edward Snowden dominating the news. And on the subject of Bradley Manning, there is some very important breaking news which just came through on the wires here. A military judge hands Bradley Manning 35 years. Bradley Manning has been sentenced to 35 years in prison for giving military and diplomatic secrets to the website WikiLeaks. And so he's actually been convicted of the Espionage Act, and the convictions came a few weeks ago. And when Susan Lindauer comes on, we're going to talk a lot about this, and we're going to get into the kind of twisted violations of logic, of language, of meaning. I mean, how can a man who shared information in the public interest that was purely about human rights abuses, about war crimes, who shared that with the world, be convicted of espionage? How does that come under the terms of espionage? It doesn't make any sense, does it? So much of what's going on in the world just doesn't make any sense. And, to understand that, I think we really need to probe deep into the psyche of what's happened to modern humanity. And in future shows, I actually really want to get into trying to understand the psychological underpinnings of the deception and the kind of twisting of meanings. We're not even so much talking about outright lying and deceptions, which of course goes on. We're talking about, 1 + 1 = 3. We're saying, black is white, and people basically buying it. People saying, yes, leaking information about war crimes is actually espionage. And of course, that's what they charged Edward Snowden with as well, violations of the US Constitution, bringing that to the public attention through a well-respected newspaper like The Guardian. That's espionage. I mean, Julian Assange wanted for sex crimes because he had sex with a broken condom. Again, it's like we're living in some topsy-turvy world of where meanings can be swapped around, where we're losing our bearings, unfortunately, of what's real and what is not. And of course, going back to our old mate George Orwell, this is something that he predicted in the future tyrannical state that he wrote about, is that your reality, your sense of reality, meanings themselves would be twisted around to suit the agendas of the powers that be. So do join us for the second hour. It's going to be fascinating. And Susan Lindauer is also going to talk to us about her background there, being a back channel for US negotiations with the Iraqi government, and other governments that she was associated with, and some of her intelligence that she gleaned about the impending 9/11 attacks. All really, really fascinating stuff. Now, in the meantime, I'd like to move ahead with some Australian news. I've got a story here from yahoo.com.au. Quite a strange and disturbing story. A federal candidate threatens legal action over arrest. A candidate in next month's federal election is threatening legal action against police, claiming he has been unfairly targeted after he was arrested and released without charge. Independent candidate Mark Aldridge said police showed up on his doorstep around 8 a.m. yesterday without a warrant. Using his secret camera watch, Mr. Aldridge said he documented what happened inside the Elizabeth Police Station. And it says here that he was given a warrant for his arrest and that he was asked to supply a DNA sample in relation to alleged breaches of his firearm licence. But after 6 hours in custody, he was released without giving a sample and without being charged. Now, of course, Mark Aldridge is known to a few people on Facebook. He's actually a connection of mine on Facebook. He's of somewhat of a libertarian bent. He's certainly anti-establishment, and it seems really this looks like a bit of a case of intimidation. And he says here that he'll be taking action against the police for putting him in custody for no reason. This will be going to court, and I'll fight this all the way, and they can keep trying to intimidate me if they like, and I will keep fighting back. And I've got a little video clip here from Channel 7, and we'll just kick that off, see if it tells us anything interesting.
A local candidate at next month's federal elections threatening legal action against police, claiming he's been unfairly targeted. Mark Aldridge was taken into custody yesterday, but ended up being released without charge.
Surrounded by officers and handcuffed, Mark Aldridge was arrested yesterday morning.
I've done nothing wrong.
He says police showed up on his doorstep around 8 o'clock without a warrant.
Bruised and battered, to be honest, and pretty horrific and scary experience for sure.
Using his secret camera watch, Mr. Aldridge says he documented what happened inside the Elizabeth Police Station. He says he was only then given a warrant for his arrest, asking for a DNA sample in relation to alleged breaches of his firearm licence. But after 6 hours in custody, he was released without giving a sample and without being charged. Mr. Aldridge is running as an independent for the northern suburbs seat of Wakefield. He says he was arrested on different matters while campaigning in 2010.
I'm not really sure what this is about, and the timing didn't seem very appropriate.
This is just another example of the police having no respect for my clients and indeed the public's civil liberties in general.
I'll definitely be taking action against the police for putting me in custody for no reason.
Police refused to answer questions about the incident from 7 News today, instead suggesting if Mr. Aldridge has a problem, then he should take it to the police ombudsman.
Well, that's just another example of the creeping tyranny that we've seen so much of in Australia. And you know, when the police act this way, we don't know. We really don't know what's going on. And we probably never will. But it's important to report on these things, to actually talk about it. And hopefully, you know, the more we talk about it, the more prospect we have to actually do something about it. Now, just moving along with another story here from the WikiLeaks party. They have released one of their policies, and this one is on climate change. And I was slightly dismayed, actually, to see this. From the WikiLeaks party, the climate change policy. Quite a long and detailed position here, where they clearly have adopted the extreme position of climate alarmism. Executive summary, climate change policy, the WikiLeaks party. The WikiLeaks party acknowledges that human-induced change to the climate is occurring and will continue to occur unless actions are taken to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The WikiLeaks party supports Australian contributions to keep global temperatures to less than 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Acknowledges that a significant proportion of Australia's coal reserves will have to remain unburned if the world is to avoid further dangerous global warming. Now, the document here goes on to outline all of the policies in relation to climate change, which are pretty much the government policies, and they're right behind it. It's disappointing, I must say, and worrying. I'm a huge supporter of Julian Assange, the man, huge supporter of the cause of transparency that he supports, but climate change, is not the lobbyists for action on climate change are not really renowned for their transparency. What they're renowned for is actually suppressing dissenting viewpoints. They're renowned for using tricks, to hide the decline. And that actually, oddly, ironically, that little gem there actually came from WikiLeaks. The ClimateGate scandal and the information revealed there was actually revealed by WikiLeaks. What I think's going on here with WikiLeaks is that you've got to understand that their main support base is from the radical left, from the Socialist Alliance, groups like that in Australia. And of course, there's a huge continuum there between the Socialist Alliance and the Greens, and of course what they call the Green Left. And WikiLeaks has somewhat been embraced by them and sort of adopted by them. I would wonder whether this would have been an important policy of WikiLeaks were it not for that tendency we have in Australia for certain causes to be basically just swallowed up by the left, by the socialists. And it's really disappointing. The climate change is a specific issue, right? It's out there on its own. When you believe in human rights and justice and freedom of speech and whistleblowers, that doesn't automatically mean that you believe that the world is experiencing dangerous warming due to carbon dioxide emissions. Those are completely separate propositions. But with a lot of these political movements, it all gets merged together. And it's all conflated. You're with Truth News Radio Australia. When we come back from the break, I'll be continuing with more Australian news. Do stay with us.
Are you getting fed up with all the disinformation, deception, spin, propaganda, half-truths and downright lies in mainstream news? Looking for something different? Visit Truth News Radio Australia, www.truthnews.com.au, and may the truth set you free.
You with Truth News Radio. Do check us out if you have a chance. Check out our website, have a look at our podcasts, have a look at our RSS feed, and have a look at our Facebook page. A lot of good information on there. Now, I've got a A story about vaccination, an interesting one. It's all about Tony Abbott being wrong about child immunisation rates. But this story actually tells you a lot about the nanny state in Australia. It's like you've got to read between the lines with this story to actually see what the incredibly breathtaking, superior, high-handed sort of position that government takes in relation to the unwashed masses, and their sort of idea that that we're just putty in their hands, to be basically herded and controlled. Opposition, and this is a story from the ABC, of course, so one of the organs of the nanny state here in Australia. Opposition leader Tony Abbott says child immunisation rates have fallen under the Labor government. During the Howard government, vaccination rates were back over 90%, a great achievement of a coalition government, Mr Abbott told the 10 Network's Meet the Press on August 18. Now they are dropping back again, he said. I think it is important to do what we reasonably can to get them up again. I just wish this government hadn't presided over a reduction in vaccination rates. Later that day, Prime Minister Kevin Rudd said Mr Abbott had his facts wrong. When we came to office, the immunisation rate for 5-year-olds was standing at 83%, Mr Rudd said during a press conference at Westmead Hospital in Sydney's West. Through the excellent efforts of Tanya Plibersek, the Health Minister, and our colleagues across the states, we have lifted that to 90% and reinforced that work through our Medicare local teams who have immunisation officers at work as well. So, Mr Abbott, if you're going to enter the debate on immunisation, get your facts right. We have increased it from 83 to 90%, and we want to get it from 90% to as close to 100% as possible. Now, you might read that and just read the language of it. You might just say, well, it sort of all sounds good, doesn't it? It all sounds very positive. They're trying to do something good. They're trying to make Australia a healthy place. And, maybe you believe that vaccination is an unqualified good. It is an incontestable good, a greater good, a truth. But even so, I put it to you, even if you buy into all that, consider the mentality that goes with thinking about the Australian people as just some sort of herd of cattle to be moved in a particular direction. Well, we're going to get everyone doing this. We're going to get everyone doing that. Last I heard, these things were actually voluntary, right? If you choose to take a medicine, it's up to you. If you choose to have a vaccine, it's up to you. If you choose to eat healthy food, it's up to you. The idea that government sort of take responsibility for us all, and then says, this government didn't do it quite well enough. We need to change. We need to make sure that everyone does this. There is a basic flaw here, a very basic underlying flaw. And there are other aspects to this which are even more disturbing than that, in that the techniques that are being used to change behaviour are becoming increasingly invasive, increasingly manipulative, and clamping down on people's freedoms. And I'm particularly referring to the measures that the Rudd government brought through to limit tax breaks, so that people who do not get their kids vaccinated miss out on a whole bunch of tax breaks, which amounts to quite a large amount of money. And I'll just read to you from the story on that from the ABC. Labor to cut tax benefit for parents who don't immunise children. And this is published on the 19th of August. Prime Minister Kevin Rudd has announced that parents who choose not to have their children vaccinated will miss out on thousands of dollars in government benefits. Speaking at Westmead Hospital in Sydney on Sunday, Mr Rudd said that those who do not vaccinate their children will not get the Family Tax Benefit A end-of-year supplement. The payment is worth $726 per child per year and is paid when children are vaccinated at 1, 2 and 5 years of age. Since last year, parents who have not immunised their children have not received the benefit. However, those registering as so-called conscientious objectors have. Under Labor's policy, exemptions would only be made on religious or medical grounds. Well, isn't that ridiculous? Isn't that just absurd and outrageous and offensive? Doesn't that make you want to jump up and down and smash something? You can't be a conscientious objector. No, you can't actually have a conscience and a thinking mind and be concerned about it. No, but if you have a religious belief, that's okay. It's idiotic. It's idiotic. Look, the hurting of people, the controlling of people, the manipulation of people, the stupidity of this way of having like rules and then exemptions without really any rhyme or reason has to be called to account. But unfortunately, neither the left nor the right, and neither Liberal nor Labor nor the Greens nor anyone else in Australia gives a tinker's cuss about facts when it comes to Big Pharma. No one in the political spectrum of any weight is doing anything about the assault on our health that's being conducted by huge pharmaceutical corporations. And on that note, I have another story to read to you here about a class action that is taking place in Australia against the contraceptives Yaz and Yasmin, which are manufactured by pharmaceutical company Bayer. 60 women in New South Wales and 63 women in Victoria have approached Adelaide firm Tyndall Gask Bentley, reporting blood clots, strokes and heart attacks after taking these pills. In 2011, the British Medical Journal published 2 studies reporting that women who use newer combined contraceptive pills such as Yasmin, which contain both estrogen and a progestogen hormone, were twice as likely to develop life-threatening blood clots than those taking pills developed earlier, which use an older hormone called levonorgestrel. But doctors say side effects associated with combination pills have been known for years and the risks are very low. Any woman who goes on the pill has an increased risk of blood clots. That is not new. Well, that is actually true, folks, and I've done a bit of research on this myself. And what I've discovered is that, it's true. All of the modern, what they call, I think, third generation contraceptives have been associated with a wide spectrum of medical problems, blood clots being one of them, but breast cancer is another risk. And I did some research because my girlfriend was actually taking some of those pills. And, what I found is that they have massive physiological effects. And people have been taking these pills for decades. They're not safe. I'm going to break. Do stay close. Hi, welcome back to the show. I was just talking there in the last segment about the latest scandal over big pharma medications which have been foisted on hapless patients for decades. And in this case, we're actually talking about people who aren't really patients. We're just talking about women who've purchased contraceptives which have been presented as being completely safe and really so many millions and millions of people have taken these drugs. The effect of that on the health of the people at large is really hard to calculate. All I can say is, like, if you're listening to this and you're taking these pills, have a look at the information. Start Googling, do searches on it. It won't take you long to find out that there are massive problems with these drugs. And of course, the whole question about oral contraceptions leads into a lot of complex questions about society, about sex, about reproduction. And we really need to think about it. We need to think about, like, when we were sold this idea that, it's so easy and convenient to just pop a pill so that you won't have a baby. Were we perhaps being sold down the river at that point? I mean, that started in the early 60s. And, these pills have never been safe, folks. They've never been okay. And just have a think about it. Think about what this is doing. These pills are actually flooding your body with hormones, which are normally only produced at certain times of the month and are carefully regulated by your body's delicate and powerful metabolism to basically run the menstrual cycle, so that you have all the phases that go with the reproductive cycle of being a female. And when you take these pills, you're basically just leveling all that. You're basically shutting it all down. You're sending completely wrong signals to your body to basically prevent ovulation occurring. You're also you're taking progestin, which actually stops ovulation. You're taking estrogen, which actually stops the egg from developing. And women who take these drugs, across the board, report so many different symptoms and so many different problems: headaches, tiredness, weight gain, breast enlargement, painful swelling of the breasts, which can later be associated with breast cancer if this goes on for year after year after year. Mood disorders, lack of sexual libido. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. I mean, how is it possible that these drugs are even allowed? I mean, there's a travesty, isn't it? And you can just walk into a chemist in a lot of countries and you just buy them off the shelf. In some countries you have to have prescriptions, but and of course every now and then there's a class action. Every now and then it leaks out that one or another brand is actually hurting people. The fact is they're all hurting people. And we just need to get back to the basics. We need to understand that you don't muck around with your body's hormones. There are other ways to practice contraception. Of course, there may be not as 100% effective as the pill, but the pill is not 100% effective, I should say, either. It's only about 97% effective, only slightly more effective than condoms, in fact. A certain percentage of women every year get pregnant when they're on the pill, and you've got to wonder about that as well. I mean, you've got to wonder about the health effects of those women and their children who did become pregnant while on the pill. And I don't know what the studies are about that. There hasn't been a lot of studies. How are those kids doing? There must be many born every year. There must be thousands, hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of kids have been born this way. Anyway, I do encourage you to have a look at that article, Women on Pill Ponder Class Action Over Fallout, which was published on the Sydney Morning Herald on August 17, 2013. Now, just returning to global news, I've got this incredibly disturbing story here about Glenn Greenwald's partner being detained at Heathrow Airport for 9 hours. David Miranda, partner of Guardian interviewer of whistleblower Edward Snowden, was questioned under the Terrorism Act. Now, I mean, I've read quite a few stories here linking to this one. And the man was detained under the Terrorism Act, but the authorities had been following him, had been tracking him, and they were trying to get access to any materials that his partner, Glenn Greenwald, might have given him. And he was put under the most horrendous threats during this interrogation. And what this actually revealed is that the Terrorism Act in the UK is a complete outrage against human rights. I'll just read you here from the Guardian article. The controversial law, which applies only at airports, allows officers to stop, search and question and detain individuals. David Miranda was held for 9 hours. And that's the maximum that the time allows. But his electronics equipment was confiscated, his mobile phone, his laptop, his camera, memory sticks, DVDs, and games consoles. Now, it gets worse, folks, because the man was told that he has to cooperate. This is part of the legislation. He was told that he has to cooperate with their investigation. He was forced to give them passwords to his laptop, and he was told that if he did not do that, he would actually be charged and put in prison. And also the icing on the cake is that he is not entitled to legal representation. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You can be detained, interrogated, forced to cooperate, and denied legal representation. This is all under the Terrorism Act UK 2000. I mean, that's 2000, right? That's actually before September 11. Wow. I mean, things have gone so far down a track that we didn't even notice it, at the early stage of that. And we're only discovering the worst aspects of this now. I mean, I didn't know that they had those sort of powers in the UK. And here's a glaring case of how they're actually using these powers in a case where there is absolutely no suspicion of terrorism. There is no reasonable suspicion or probable cause. Basically, they're after Glenn Greenwald. The US government is after Glenn Greenwald. They're after Edward Snowden. They want to stop information leaking out, and they're simply using the Terrorism Act as a pretext. Incredible. Now, of course, the increasingly hysterical attempts of the powers that be to silence the whistleblowing activities of Edward Snowden and his supporters are, I guess, explained by the fact that it just gets worse and worse in terms of the information that's coming out. I've got a recent article here from The Guardian. NSA revelations of privacy breaches are just the tip of the iceberg. Leading critics of NSA Ron Wyden and Mark Udall say public deserves to know more about violations and secret court orders. 2 US senators on the Intelligence Committee said that thousands of annual violations by the National Security Agency on its own restrictions were just the tip of the iceberg. The executive branch has now confirmed that the rules, regulations and court-imposed standards for protecting the privacy of Americans have been violated thousands of times every year. We have previously said that the violations of these laws were more serious than had been acknowledged, and we believe Americans should know that this confirmation is just the tip of a larger iceberg. And we're going to break. You're with Truth News Radio Australia. Please stay with us. You're tuned to Truth News Radio Australia, and it is superb to have your company today. And I do encourage you not to touch the radio dial. Stay tuned, because in the next hour I'm getting a really, really interesting, original and passionate guest on, Susan Lindauer, whistleblower, CIA asset, and victim of the US Patriot Act, is coming on to talk about a whole range of things, with a special focus on the Bradley Manning situation and Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And that will be carrying us through for the whole hour coming up. Now, I've got another story here to bring you, an interesting one, on a topic we haven't really touched on, I don't think, on this show, oddly. I mean, we've covered a lot of things, but the questions about the death of Princess Diana, which just won't go away, despite that inquest they had a few years ago, which was such a clear whitewash and cover-up, and such a pathetic one, after all the build-up to it, and all the evidence that did come out that said that she was worried about her life, and so many things that came up during the lead-up to that inquest, which were all finally just silenced by a statement that there was no conspiracy, nothing happened, nothing to see here, just move on. I couldn't believe it. There had been an expectation that something was going to be revealed here that was very important. But this is what we've seen again and again with these inquiries, these investigations. It's like it's a circus. It's just like it's done to kind of, it's all just for show. It's all just theatre. But it's so dysfunctional, isn't it? It's so broken. It's just so tragic that our world has become so broken, and that processes of law and reasoning and intellect are just trodden on. But as we've seen again and again with these conspiracies, they just don't go away, do they? I mean, you can't. Murder will out. Gross injustices will finally find their way to. They will bubble to the surface of our collective consciousness. And I've got a new story that just came out. It was published on Sky News. Scotland Yard says it is assessing new information on the death of Princess Diana to determine its relevance and credibility. New information that alleges Princess Diana was murdered has been passed to Scotland Yard through military sources. And this story was repeated across all the news services all around the world a few days ago. Fascinating. I'll just play you a clip here which was actually aired on Sky News.
There are some of the last images of Diana, Princess of Wales and Dodi Fayed. It's 10 to 10 on the evening of August 31st, 1997. Soon after, they'd be dead, fatally injured in a crash in this Paris underpass, along with their French driver. Despite numerous inquiries, there are those who still refuse to believe the official version of events. Some are convinced Diana was deliberately killed. Now Scotland Yard has revealed it's assessing fresh allegations contained in a letter from the former parents-in-law of a former soldier, claims that the military murdered Diana.
Anything involving Diana in the case itself will be investigated seriously and professionally. They'll have to check the credibility of the source itself, the credibility of the information, and check how valid it is.
In 2008, an inquest jury found the Princess and Mr Fayed had been unlawfully killed by the actions of their chauffeur Henri Paul, who was over the drink-drive limit, and by the paparazzi who'd been chasing the couple's car. Numerous inquiries, including a very lengthy and costly investigation by detectives here at Scotland Yard, have examined some of the many conspiracy theories surrounding the tragedy. Questions like, was Henri Paul really intoxicated? Authorities say he was, and found no evidence his blood samples had been switched. Was Diana pregnant? A possible motive, some claimed, for her death. A pathologist concluded the Princess was not pregnant. Were the couple murdered by the security services? Investigators found nothing to substantiate that claim. Was their Mercedes in collision with a white Fiat Uno? Intriguingly, authorities concluded it was. That vehicle has never been traced.
There can't be any new evidence because this was purely and simply an accident. And if I'd had £1 for every time somebody with little or no knowledge, or those who are fantasists, had come up to me and said this is a murder, this is a conspiracy, I'd be a very rich man.
Clarence House has declined to comment on this latest development, but both Princes William and Harry have said in the past that continued speculation of their mother's death was deeply hurtful. A small team from Scotland Yard's Specialist Crime and Operations Command is expected to take a few weeks to determine if the latest allegations are worthy of a more detailed investigation.
Well, I'll really be holding my breath. It looks like they're going to break the story and we're all going to find out what really happened. Yeah. This is a textbook case of what happens when new information is provided from a source that cannot be completely quashed or silenced. It kind of bubbles up into the media a little bit and then it just gets dropped. And this is what we'll see in this case. It reminds me of various things we've seen about the Kennedy assassination or about September 11. Something significant emerges. You never really find out in great detail what it is, but there is a big hullabaloo about it. It's like, well, there's this new information, blah, 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 blah. And then a talking head comes on and says it's all rubbish, just like what we saw there in the interview. The man they had on said, it's all rubbish, and these people that come on that say all this, I've heard them many times before, it's all rubbish. And this is the ingenious way that the media has of basically taking information when they have to actually feed information to the general public and then sort of washing it through a process where it becomes denuded, where it becomes stripped of all its meaning and validity. Fascinating, really. But, of course, it's clear that Princess Diana was killed. There was a variety of motives. But what is most disturbing of all, I guess, is what that indicates about the family that she was married into, about the people who have so much power and influence in Britain today. It's really scary, folks. To think that these people have the ruthlessness to act in this way means that we are up against a tremendous amount of evil in our current world. And it's up to you, it's up to the listener, it's up to me, it's up to good-hearted people, it's up to people with an internal compass which is not broken, to just never lie down, never accept it, never bow down before evil and lies, and just spread the truth wherever you go. Now, one last story in our roundup of world news for this week. I've got a story here which was published on RT saying that Israel was behind the Egypt coup. And this is actually a statement from the Turkish Prime Minister. Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan claims Ankara has proof that Israel was behind the July 3 military coup that toppled Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi. Erdogan said the West was beginning to redefine democracy as a process that is not solely determined at the ballot box. Erdogan spoke of a meeting between Turkey's justice minister and a Jewish intellectual in France before Egypt's 2011 elections. The Muslim Brotherhood will not be in power even if they win the elections because democracy is not the ballot box. Erdogan did not clarify what connection the unidentified intellectual had to the Israeli government or how his alleged opinion proved Israel played any part in the recent ouster of Morsi. Now, an interesting thing about this story is that if you read the comments, it has very little support from the readers of this site. Basically, they think that Turkey is playing a kind of a double game here. That in fact, the powers that be, Turkey being kind of allied with them, and of course Israel, were not behind the toppling. That is actually kind of a cover story that is being used to, I guess, to propagandize about the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. I've been through a lot of soul searching in regard to what's actually going on in Egypt, and I found it very confusing. Next week, I'm going to have a guest on who's actually an activist in Egypt who's going to give us, I think, a really interesting insight into what is actually happening there, which was a little different to what I thought, and perhaps I'm going to have to reverse some of my opinions that I expressed on last week's show. I do hope you stay tuned for that. That'll be really interesting next week. But for now, please stay with us for our really important interview coming up in the next hour with Susan Lindauer. You're with Truth News Radio Australia.